Well, Coach, just starting off, I'm curious about Trevor Lawrence, of course. So when Trevor Lawrence being in the building now, what are some things you've seen about him that you maybe didn't know about him beforehand?
I knew a lot about Trevor. I think we all did. Obviously, I was in the college game for so many years. I'm really close with Dabo Swinney, his former head coach, and really I've seen him up live, up close and live and in person several times. So I knew a lot about him, but I think one of the most refreshing things is he's worried about he's married. He's, he has no distractions, which is amazing to me. In 2021, the world's about distractions, and there is none with him. And it's our job to keep it that way. And his focus is on being a good husband, being strong in his faith, and winning games. And that's really cool.
Not every rookie quarterback comes in day one and starts week one. Based on what you've seen from him in mini camp, do you think he's ready to start week one? And what gives you the confidence that he's ready?
He's not ready yet, but he doesn't have to be ready yet. We got a long training camp coming up. He's probably advanced maybe a little quicker than we would have thought, which was a positive. We were, one thing that we worked on when we made a decision that Trevor was going to be our number one pick, we went from the evaluation stage to preparation stage. And that means that, I want to say, I can't remember the exact date, but we started installing the playbook with him well before the draft. And so you can see the retention. He's got really good work ethic, and he's progressed very well.
Speaking of someone new in the building, you are very familiar with Tim Tebow. You guys had magic in Florida, won 2 national titles with him. Looking back first, what do you remember most about your time with him?
Oh, it started back in 2005, and he's the most competitive human being I've ever been around. One of the toughest, probably the toughest too, toughest competitive guy. And obviously was in the rotation when we won the first national title. We won a Heisman, we won the second one. And we really should have won a third one. But he finished 13-1 and had a great year. So competitor and toughness are the two things that Tim Tebow is all about.
After your time with the Gators, did you think you'd ever cross paths with him again? Like, is it surreal to be working with him again 12 years later?
Well, I've known Tim, and I'm on his foundation board with the Tebow Foundation. And to be part of that has been a game changer for me about some of the impacts that his foundation had made, not just in Jacksonville, but across the world. But I never really thought about it. I never thought. I know he had his NFL experience, and then he went on to professional baseball. And then, we made this decision.
Yeah. You said he's done a decent job so far. What do you think he needs to show you at that position to make you feel comfortable putting him in a game and potentially making the 53-man roster?
Yeah, the last thing you just said is the tough part is 53, and that's new to me. That's the reality of the NFL, that you have 90 players. So to me, he's one of 90. He's a guy that's, what's the difference between him and the other 40 guys trying to make the team? To me, it's all the same. This is their livelihood. This is a job. This is a way to make a living. And reality is that, a good percentage of your roster is going to get cut or transitioned out of here, which to me, that's completely new. In college, you got your 85, 95 guys and you fit them in and you put the puzzle together. Much different here.
So we know coaches and teams try not to throw around the labels rebuild and contender. But what are your expectations for this season in Jacksonville, and how are you defining success this year?
Years ago, I changed just from extrinsic goals to intrinsic. There's too many variables. If I would ever stand in front of the Florida Gators or Ohio State Buckeyes and say we're going to try to win the national title, I shouldn't do that. The mind does not work that way. That's a goal that's really unattainable when you really think about it. You can say it all you want, but then it's also there's too many variables. There's injuries. There's committees. So I went to intrinsic over the last probably 10 years of my career, and I'm going to do the same thing here, and that's to be the best version of who we are. We have some really good players here. If we play really well, I think we'll win some games. If we don't, they didn't play very well last year. And I'm not saying it was the coaching, because I don't believe it was. I don't believe it was the talent. I believe there are other variables. One was health and performance of the guys in the off season and staying healthy throughout the season. So the goal, or our goal, and I've made it clear to our team, is I know the best version of them. I expect the best version of them. I expect the strongest, most powerful, fastest version of them when they show up in August. If they're not at that, there's a chance I won't have you around. And that's the Jaguars are going to do a certain way. And I expect the player to be at the very best version of themselves. That's our goals for next year.
Shad Khan is obviously doing everything he can to bring a winner to Jacksonville, but it's also clear the NFL is also helping the Jags out on the international stage, playing in London for the 8th time in the last 9 seasons. How important is it for this team to find that success on the field to revitalize the fan base?
Well, that's part of the reason I was so Jacksonville Jaguars are so appealing. I know the 904. I've been here many, many times. I love the people here. When I used to recruit here, I just loved the high schools, the high school coaches. I enjoyed my time here. It's been even better than what I thought in January. This city is ready to explode. I don't want to hear about how great these other stadiums are and ours is bad. And that's why I use the term own it. Jacksonville has to own it, and so do our players. If we put this thing together the right way, I expect us to have a great home field advantage, a great environment to play a home game in, and our players to do their part.
As a coach, are you comfortable knowing that you're going to be coaching international games every year? And is it a priority for the organization to grow the Jags international brand?
I've talked with Shad, but not in detail about this. I think coaches are probably the coaches I know. They could go play in the Sandlot, or they go play in Mexico. They could go play in London. They could go play wherever. I had one experience when I was at Notre Dame. We went and played in Dublin, Ireland. And I know one thing: we weren't doing sightseeing or enjoying the culture. We were trying to go win a game. So I think it's really good for the state of the NFL. I think it's really good. We have such an incredible product that the world wants to see. Show them. And, we're the closest, really, our just proximity to London makes sense. And I know it's important to Shad, so it's important to me.
Jimmy Johnson is the benchmark for coaches making the transition from college to the NFL. And he's also your former colleague at Fox. I asked him back in February what advice he'd give you about that transition. And he said, number one thing, bring in the right coaches, obviously, and him not having pro experience, he's going to have to bring in coaches with professional experience. And he also said, number two, bring in talent and utilize the information that he's got. So I'm curious, what do you think of that advice, and how do you think you're going to be implementing that in Duval?
Well, he's one of the guys I leaned on the most when I was, first of all, considering it. I had some college opportunities and professional opportunities, and Jimmy Johnson's a guy that we've always been friendly. We became good friends, and I admire him. Once you get to know, sometimes you see personalities on TV like Jimmy, who is excellent on television, but that guy's a deep guy, man. He's a intelligent guy. I've got to know him. I've leaned on him. I leaned on him before the draft. So if you look at our staff, I absolutely did that. I tried to put. The one interesting thing about the NFL, a lot of guys are under contract. So you can't just pick the all-star staff. In college, you say, okay, I want that guy. You go pay him more and you hire him. In pro, you can't do that. But I love where we're at as a staff. Obviously this is to be determined. But I did surround myself with guys with a wealth of experience and some college guys as well.
Do you ever look to guys like Bob Sutton and Brian Schottenheimer to help you transition to the NFL?
I do. Joe Cullen's another guy with a wealth of experience. George Warhoff, 30 years. But the guy you mentioned, Bob Sutton's a guy that is a senior assistant. I lean on him personally quite a bit, not just about defense, but about personnel, but about practices, about player management, roster management. And then Darrell Bevel and Schottenheimer have been, once again, their value to me is immense. It's much greater than how deep we're going to run a curl route or the tempo of the offense. It's about the intricacies of the complex world of the NFL, and they've been great.
There's no doubt there are several differences between college football and the pros, but what are some things that you've already learned now in the NFL that you didn't know or didn't need to know in college?
Just the lack of time you have with them. It's in college, you're dealing with young people, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and you really build the team in January, February, and March. In January, February, March, you don't even see these guys here. They don't show up until now. We had a bunch of guys here in the off-season training, but you're not allowed to lift with them. You're not allowed to have them on the field. Obviously, you can't even talk football with them. So it's a small window of time that you get to develop these players. And so, it's a challenge for me, and I challenge our coaches all the time. Be respectful of people's time. That means be efficient in your teaching, and you don't have them for very long. So that's the biggest difference between college football and professional football is the amount of time or access you got to a player.
When it comes to college football, we're seeing a lot of movement on the name, image, and likeness issue in sports. Do you think the pendulum's swinging towards athletes having more power?
Oh, it's swung. It's there. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, it's players now can transfer at any point and not be restricted. I imagine at some point they'll be able to do it. That's good. Anything that any movement creates a lot of problems though too. And I hear it all the time. I'm not in that world, but I'm very close to people in the world. And in the NFL, it's called tampering. The tampering that's going on right now in college football, as I've been told by people, is out of control. Where a guy comes from a smaller program, they call the high school coach and they say, come play for, a high level institution. A guy's a third string player on another team. Someone calls either a high school coach or a spokesperson for that guy, and they create these dilemmas that are very difficult to manage. So I'm not saying it's wrong. It's here. Name and likeness is going to throw another layer to it, and you're going to see college athletes making a lot of money. Yeah. And I know the intent is there to be good, but with anything, there's going to come some issues.
I think it's fair to say you didn't have to come back and take a shot at the NFL. You're a legend. Why'd you feel the need to do so?
I've been asked that many times. I've been asked that from people I'm very close to. And I spent 2 years. I had a great job with Fox. I love Fox. I love my teammates that were there with Reggie, Matt, Brady, and Rob Stone. And this seemed like a unique experience, unique opportunity. The owner here is an incredible person. He's a guy that I've become very close with. There's a lot of reasons why we want to win here, and our owner is number one. And his number one reason is so, it's incredible to refreshing as well. It's for Jacksonville. And then you get the number one draft pick. You get some good cap space. But I also want to say that there are some really good core players here. I don't believe in narratives. I never have. This person's opinion. I always say, well, who's talking here? Is it a well thought out opinion? And I like to develop my own. And so I watched hours upon hours of film. And I saw some very good core players here. I saw the opportunity with the draft, the number of picks that we had, and obviously the number one pick. And I saw some free agent opportunities. So it was a very unique situation that I thought was the right thing to do.
Hey sports fans, if you want to watch more sports seriously, be sure to check out these clips right here. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see all the great content from us here at USA Today Sports.